Welcome to Neural Nexus Podcast, where we explore the hottest topics shaping the world. Let's dive in.
Do you remember the Gifted and Talented program from your childhood? Maybe you knew it as GATE or GT or TAG. Depends where you were, I guess. For a lot of us, those memories, they're often really vague, right? Fragmented, almost like a dream you can't quite hold on to. But recently, something pretty extraordinary has started happening online. There's this flood of really specific, sometimes kind of unsettling memories coming out. And it sparked this huge, curious conversation. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack these shared, often bizarre experiences. We want to explore the documented historical government stuff that makes some theories seem, frankly, unsettlingly plausible, and also look at the psychological reasons why so many people might be suddenly remembering the exact same weird things.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how all these, seemingly isolated memories, things people thought were just their weird experience, they're now coming together, forming this coherent picture for a whole generation. And it really forces us to ask, what really happened in those gifted programs?
Okay, yeah. Let's unpack this. Let's start with the activities themselves. The really striking, often kind of peculiar things people report doing in these GATE programs. And these aren't just like general school memories. They're incredibly precise. Like lots of people clearly remember untangling colorful string.
String, right. Like sometimes on a board or mentally, or just a tangled mess of yarn.
Exactly. That's specific. And flashcards, memory games, speed reading exercises too. Oh, and tangrams. People mention those a lot. The weird little colorful shape block things. That phrase comes up.
It's the sheer consistency of these details, the vividness. It's not just a feeling. It's like a shared visual memory, almost tactile.
Absolutely. And then there's the auditory testing. This one's pretty common too. People remember using these unusual kind of retro headphones, often described as big, gray, greenish.
Sometimes connected to a weird briefcase thing.
Yeah, exactly. And they'd listen to weird frequencies or weird tones, or maybe stories where they had to use a clicker.
Pressing it for certain words or sounds. Yeah, I've seen those accounts.
And sticking with that sort of retro tech vibe, many also remember using super old computers, playing weird games. Oregon Trail specifically gets mentioned by some, which is oddly specific.
It is specific. It pins it to a certain era, too.
Right. And another common thing, building stuff out of just random objects like toothpicks, popsicle sticks, construction paper.
The consistency across so many people, different places, different times, that's what's really striking. These aren't, typical elementary school activities across the board, which makes seeing them repeated so often noteworthy.
Indeed. And here's where it starts to get a bit more unsettling for some. People remember wearing weirdly colored or tinted glasses, like old 3D movie glasses, maybe.
That's a new one on me, but okay. Adds to the sensory aspect.
And the environments. Being taken to very small, weird rooms, sometimes the windows were completely covered up, or there were no windows at all.
Right, that feeling of isolation or secrecy.
Or even being completely removed from school. To a trailer, maybe, with covered windows. It's just odd.
That shift in environment, from the normal classroom to somewhere isolated or off-site, it definitely amps up the mystery. Suggests something, different was happening.
And speaking of off-site, the field trips. People remember weird field trips, sometimes involving very, very long distances, or going to local businesses to talk with company heads.
Or military bases. That one comes up, too.
Yeah, or very oddly specific aquariums and planetariums. The planetariums seem to stick out for some people.
Okay, so unusual destinations, long trips, it all feeds into that sense of something beyond normal education.
But maybe the biggest memory, the one that really seems to tie these threads together, is the pink liquid. People vividly describe drinking this reddish, pinkish, sometimes purplish liquid out of a little Dixie cup.
The Dixie cup detail is so common.
Isn't it? And some even remember taking little tabs, like pills, with it. And the common thought at the time, most kids figured it was some kind of dental thing or maybe a fluoride rinse.
Which schools did do sometimes. The fluoride rinses. So it's plausible on the surface.
Right. But here's the really crucial part of all these memories we've just listed. For many, they were suppressed, forgotten for years, decades even, only to suddenly resurface. Triggered by something online, a post, a picture, a phrase. People describe it as a flood of memories just rushing back like a switch being flipped.
And that raises a huge question, doesn't it? Why the widespread memory loss or suppression? For experiences that, maybe could seem innocent on the surface. Untangling string, playing games, the shared confusion, the sudden recall. It's truly remarkable. It really resists a simple explanation.
And it gets weirder, because for many, remembering the activities also triggered remembering shared traits. Physical traits, character traits. This is where the rabbit hole gets deeper. Okay, so beyond the activities, there's this list of, well, weird character traits, that's the term used online, that many gate participants with these strange memories report having. Like a prominent occipital bun, that bump on the back of the head.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that mentioned. Not common, but recurring in these threads.
Heterochromia, too, different colored eyes or parts of eyes. Also, a lot report being predominantly male, and the firstborn sibling?
Interesting demographic points.
Mhm.
Firstborns are sometimes associated with, higher achievement focus, maybe. But males specifically. Curious.
And this one is quite striking. A significant number report having had a near-death experience, or NDE, specifically drowning.
Drowning NDEs. Wow, okay. That's a very specific shared trauma to overlay on top of these other memories.
Yeah.
It's hard to just brush these things off when they cluster together like this. These physical markers, these experiences, they add weight.
Definitely, and it doesn't stop there. Later in life, many report being recruited or attempted recruitment by intelligence agencies, CIA, NSA, that sort of thing, or other secretive groups.
Right, spook connection.
Yeah, and frequent reports of paranormal or psychic activity, seeing UFOs, experiencing telepathy, things like that. Some even have childhood memories of floating or levitating, specifically floating down the stairs.
Floating downstairs.
Right.
Okay, that sounds very dreamlike, but it's reported as memory.
Lucid dreams, astral projection, out-of-body experiences, those get mentioned frequently too. And a huge part of this whole thing is the suppressed memory aspect itself. That the gate memories were buried and came back with these very odd triggers. Seeing a picture, hearing a phrase.
The trigger phenomenon is key. It suggests the memories weren't just faded, but actively, somehow blocked or fragmented.
Other reported traits, a forehead scar, chronic migraines, oddly, predominantly lenient experiences with law enforcement, like getting let off easy.
That one's subjective, perhaps, but interesting if widely reported.
Having premonitions, predictive dreams, where things they dream actually happen later.
Okay, so we're really getting into psychic phenomena territory here. Premonitions, telepathy.
Absolutely. And consider this. Some remember being contacted or recruited by Mensa as kids. They thought getting a letter from Mensa was just normal.
But it isn't. Right, not for every child. It implies selection.
Right. There's even a quote people share, supposedly from a gate document, that resonates. Heightened self-awareness accompanied by feeling of being different.
That feeling of being different. That certainly aligns with the gifted label, but maybe something more too.
Plus, having the Rh-negative blood type comes up surprisingly often. And experiencing changes in frequency, hearing weird, high-pitched or staticky sounds that others don't.
Rh-negative blood, auditory anomalies. These often pop up in, let's say, alternative research circles looking for unusual human traits.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? It sounds a lot like, well, like Stranger Things, almost. And that's where the theory goes. A growing number of people believe these programs weren't just about, advanced math. They think they might have been a front for covert government experiments designed to identify, maybe even cultivate or recruit kids with psychic potential.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, the historical context, some of the tests described do align, kind of strikingly, with methods used historically to evaluate exactly those kinds of abilities. Like the use of Zener cards, those 5 simple shapes. They were literally invented to test ESP. Finding them in these programs is, well, it's pretty telling, isn't it?
Yeah. Super telling. And the specific tests people remember really fuel this whole conspiracy theory. Zener cards, yeah. Sometimes guessing what was inside an envelope. Classic ESP test. There are also these things called SRA, reading laboratory cards. Now, they were designed as learning tools.
Right, for reading comprehension, speed, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but one listener pointed out their structure, the way they present information or images, could be easily used as a target for remote viewing, like trying to see the card without looking.
A visual target. Yeah, I could see how that could be adapted. It's plausible.
That hearing test. Again, the headphones, the briefcase, the speculation is huge there. Were those frequencies meant to trigger something? Test ESP. Or maybe they were listening to, like, strange hypnosis tapes.
Altered states through audio input. It fits the pattern of interest from certain agencies.
And other tests, like the box with a question mark, where a kid had to sort shapes by feel without seeing the holes, or being told to visualize images hidden in an envelope, direct psychic tasks.
These methods, if they were really used like this in schools, They really do echo historical efforts by intelligence agencies to explore consciousness, perception, looking for an edge, basically.
And the personal stories people share are just incredibly compelling, sometimes chilling. One listener shared this account. As an adult, they started using the gateway tapes. We'll get more into those later. Using the tapes triggered this repressed childhood memory. Hearing distant, far-off, mumbling voices of a group of men sounded like a laboratory setting.
Wow. Okay, so a direct sensory memory linked back to childhood via an adult experience with related materials.
Exactly. And the same person later, during another gateway tape session, had this experience of being, quote, abducted onto an alien ship. Saw gray aliens giving psychic association tests on a screen, framed in shiny red plastic like an Etch-a-Sketch.
That is highly specific and quite extreme, mixing childhood program memories with classic abduction narratives.
Yeah. And this person's conclusion, they believe Gate was about finding and harnessing kids' abilities for remote viewing, astral projection, even communicating with non-human intelligence.
These incredibly vivid, often disturbing accounts, especially when they echo themes seen elsewhere online. They are hard to just dismiss as, fantasy or coincidence. They really point to something going on, whether it's purely psychological or something more organized. The detail, the consistency, it's deeply unsettling.
Here's another one. Different listener, but similar themes. Memories of specific tests. Rearranging shapes, yeah, but also moral situation questions.
Psychological profiling creeping in there too, perhaps.
Guessing Zener cards. Check. Listening to a man talking about exercise for your own development process with ocean sounds and tones in the background.
Sounds very much like guided meditation or hypnosis-style tapes.
And then drinking the pink chalky liquid and red tablets this time. And this person specifically said they didn't remember the program at all again until their 30s after receiving a purplish liquid in some unrelated context. That triggered the memory flood.
Another instance of delayed, triggered recall connected to ingesting a substance. The pattern holds.
And a third quick one. A listener's fiance remembers that box with a question mark test and visualizing hidden cards with scenes on them. And this listener herself, she remembered being in a gifted reader program in 2nd grade. She remembers nothing specific about what they did, only going to a different room led by someone who wasn't regular school staff. The vagueness itself is suspicious to her now.
The emotional distress, that sense of unease, the massive memory gaps reported by so many, followed by this sudden shared recall. It really highlights how unique and perplexing this is. It points to something deeply impactful, right? Even if the exact what is still murky.
Okay, so for anyone listening who's thinking, come on, the U.S. government would never do experiments like this on its own people, especially kids, well, the historical record, based on actual declassified documents, suggests otherwise, quite strongly, actually.
Yeah, what's really striking, as we touched on, is how the historical timeline of known, documented government interest in things like consciousness, psychic abilities, mind control, it directly overlaps with the peak years people report these gifted program experiences. That overlap creates a very compelling historical backdrop. So let's just walk through some of that chronology.
Yeah.
Based on declassified stuff, start in the 1940s, right after World War II. Operation Paperclip, the U.S. brought over German scientists, researchers, some of whom were experts in behavioral and psychological experiments, some with very dark histories. That kind of laid some groundwork.
Right, bring in an expertise, regardless of its origins.
Then the 1950s. MKUltra. Most people have heard of it now. Run by the CIA, 1953 to 73. The goal was explicitly mind control. No ambiguity there. It involved secret experiments. On willing people, yes, but also on unwitting participants, using hypnosis, sensory deprivation, drugs like LSD, and crucially, non-consensual experiments on civilians, including kids. That's documented.
At over 80 institutions, hospitals, universities, places you'd think were safe.
Exactly. And while they ordered the files destroyed in 73, some survived. So we know what happened. It's not theory, it's proven history.
So the precedent for highly unethical secret experimentation on citizens, including children, was definitely set.
Undeniably. And at the same time, also in the 50s, you have the Sputnik incident. The Soviet satellite launch caused this huge panic in the U.S. about falling behind technologically and scientifically, which led directly to the National Defense Education Act.
And that act specifically linked education funding to national defense and included programs to identify gifted children.
Right. So suddenly, finding gifted kids wasn't just about education. It was about national security. A subtle but really significant shift in framing.
Feeding into that pipeline idea.
Potentially. Then the 1960s, Project Talent, run by a psychologist, John C. Flanagan. He developed this critical incident technique for selecting fighter pilots during the war. Very specific psychological profiling. He applied similar methods to survey almost 500,000 students, 444,000 kids, using psychometric tests, psychological profiles.
Methods that echoed MKUltra.
Some researchers argue yes, the depth of psychological profiling echoed those interests. And the speculation is strong that this huge data set might have been used as basically a talent pool, a feeder program to find kids suited for intelligence or defense roles.
Wow. Okay, so it's looking less like coincidence and more like potential infrastructure being built.
It's certainly a plausible interpretation of the known facts. Moving to the 1970s, Project Stargate. This was CIA and Army, directly responding to rumors the Soviets were weaponizing ESP. So, the U.S. decided it needed its own psychic spying program, exploring remote viewing for intelligence gathering.
Remote viewing, seeing things far away, using only the mind.
Exactly, and Stargate ran until 1995. Now, the sources we looked at point out that the GATE programs were in full effect right around the time Stargate was active, and these GATE programs were apparently doing memory and sensory tests resembling psychic screening. The timing is, again, very suggestive.
And this is where people like Ingo Swann come in, the father of remote viewing.
Precisely. He was recruited for an early version of Stargate called ScanIt. He developed controlled remote viewing techniques. Famously, even remote viewed coordinates on the moon for the CIA. Sounds wild, but it's documented.
So we have the government actively researching psychic spying right when schools are running these weird gifted tests that resemble psychic screening. The parallels are hard to just dismiss.
Very hard. And it continued. The 1980s saw the Jacob Javits Act, which expanded gifted programs nationwide, potentially aligning them even more with these intelligence agendas. At the same time, NSA and DARPA were integrating STEM curricula specifically for gifted students, creating clear pipelines for cybersecurity and defense.
So the link between gifted education and defense intelligence became even more explicit over time.
It appears so. Which leads us to the present, looking back. The declassified docs on MKUltra, Stargate. These strongly suggest gifted programs could have been used to covertly screen kids. No public smoking gun says GATE was MKUltra Jr., but the circumstantial evidence, the overlap, the methods, it's compelling.
But wait, there's one more piece that ties directly back to those personal stories we heard. The Gateway experience.
Right, the Gateway tapes. Developed by Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute. These are audio tapes, guided meditations, using something called binaural beats. Specific sound frequencies played in each ear. The idea is to synchronize the brain's hemispheres. And the stated goal, to induce altered states, lucid dreaming, astral projection, remote viewing.
Okay, that sounds exactly like the stuff the government was interested in with Stargate.
It does. And crucially, the CIA didn't just ignore this. They investigated it. Seriously. There's a declassified 29-page report from 1983, written by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonald. He evaluated the whole Gateway process, the tapes, the techniques for its potential to enhance learning, problem solving, and, yes, remote viewing.
The military was assessing meditation tapes for psychic potential.
Officially. And Robert Monroe himself. He openly collaborated with U.S. military and intelligence agencies. CIA documents confirmed that actual CIA operatives took part in experiments using Monroe's Hemisync audio technology. The connection is direct and documented.
And looping back, as we heard earlier, some former GATE students specifically remember having to listen to these kinds of tapes, or something very similar with tones and voices, as part of their programs. So what does this all mean for those memories? Are they real echoes of these programs?
It is. It's a lot to take in. And it brings us to a really vital question. Are these shared memories actual evidence of some huge covert program running through schools? Or could there be another explanation? And this really forces us to think about memory itself, doesn't it? How it works, how it can be flawed, how it can be influenced. Some psychologists suggest that intense, maybe confusing childhood experiences, especially for gifted kids. Remember, gifted kids often face unique challenges, right? Anxiety, social isolation, feeling different. Those feelings could color memories. And those experiences could get misremembered over time or reinterpreted later in life through a new lens.
Like trauma. Trauma is known to fragment memories, right? Make them confusing, hard to access.
Yeah, exactly. Trauma can shatter a memory into pieces. And those pieces might only resurface later, maybe out of order, maybe feeling incomplete or strange, until something triggers them.
So the brain tries to make sense of it later, maybe filling in gaps?
It's possible. The brain strives for coherence. And think about neurodiversity, too. For many people diagnosed autistic later in life who were often channeled into gifted programs back then, For things like those loud, high-pitched hearing tests, that could have been genuinely traumatic for a highly sensitive nervous system.
Overwhelming, maybe painful even.
Definitely. Which could lead to negative feelings, memory fragmentation. And then years later, reading similar accounts online could cause those fragments to recombine, maybe into a narrative that fits the shared story.
Okay, so individual trauma or neurotype could play a role in how these memories feel and resurface.
It's a plausible psychological factor.
Yeah.
And then there's just the power of suggestion and our tendency to see patterns.
Mm.
Illusory pattern perception. Humans are wired to find meaning, even in randomness. You take a few scattered, genuinely weird school memories, because let's face it, some school stuff was weird back then, add that shared feeling of being different in gait, and you get the seeds of a compelling story. Then one person posts online.
And someone else reads it and thinks, wait, I remember something like that.
Exactly. It creates this snowball effect. Is it collective memory or collective suggestion or a mix? It's hard to untangle.
Okay, so if we entertain the idea that these were just innocent, maybe poorly explained activities, what about the pink liquid? That one seems harder to explain away as just a weird game so many people remember drinking something.
Right. On the one hand, the mundane explanation exists. Could it have been Pepto-Bismol from the school nurse? Maybe. Unlikely for whole groups, but possible. Or, more plausibly, those dental disclosure tabs or liquids. They're often pink or red, used for oral hygiene lessons, to show plaque.
Okay, that fits the description and the school setting.
But then there's the fluoride theory,
Yeah.
which is definitely more unsettling. Fluoride was given in schools, sometimes as a daily swish, we know that. And fluoride is known to bind to calcium, including in the pineal gland.
The pineal gland, often called the third eye in spiritual circles, linked to intuition, perception.
Exactly. And fluoride accumulation can lead to calcification of the pineal gland, which in turn might inhibit melatonin production, affect sleep cycles. The darker theory, which is definitely unproven, highly speculative.
But it's out there.
It is. It suggests fluoride was maybe given intentionally to calcify the pineal gland, subtly dampen or inhibit any innate psychic abilities these gifted kids might have had.
Why? To keep them from challenging the status quo, to make them more manageable.
That's the speculation. Again, no proof. But it connects the physical memory, drinking the liquid, to the broader themes of control and untapped potential.
Wow, okay. And just briefly, there was that weird meme coincidence about a chemical plant showing up in gate memes. Probably unrelated to psychic stuff, but neurotoxic chemicals can cause altered states, hallucinations, memory issues.
Right. A strange tangent, probably just a coincidence of internet culture, but worth noting the potential for environmental factors to affect perception and memory, even if unrelated to this core gate mystery.
Yeah, likely a red herring there.
So ultimately, where does that leave us? We have programs like MKUltra, Project Stargate, the Gateway Experience. These are real declassified government programs with aims related to mind control, psychic exploration. That's fact. But there is no public, concrete evidence directly linking those specific programs to the widespread gifted and talented programs in regular schools.
No declassified memo saying use gate to find mini Ingo swans.
Not that we know of, no. And yet, for thousands of people, these memories, the physical sensations, the feelings they trigger, they are undeniably real. As many say online, it feels too real to ignore.
And if this is all just mass suggestion or collective misremembering, wow, it has to be one of the most incredibly specific, consistent, and emotionally loaded examples we've ever seen. The sheer precision of the shared details, the string, the headphones, the liquid is just astounding.
Well, this deep dive has certainly taken us down some unexpected rabbit holes, hasn't it?
It really has. We've covered a lot of ground. The eerie consistency in those childhood memories, the undeniable documented history of government messing with consciousness and psychic stuff, and the very real psychological impacts, too. Fragmented memories, suppressed trauma, how neurodiversity might play in. It's complex. Yeah. Whether you personally remember untangling string, or sipping that weird pink drink, or playing games on an old Apple III in a room with no windows, the shared experience of these gifted programs and the questions they raise now, it's a really powerful reminder, isn't it, of how our past, even the bits we thought we forgot, can bubble up and profoundly shape our present.
It also really challenges us, I think, to consider that fine line between shared memory and mass suggestion, and to be critical.
Yeah.
You know, how do we interpret our own memories when we see them reflected by others, especially against this backdrop of documented, weird historical events?
Yeah. Maybe the biggest takeaway is just the importance of questioning,
Mhm.
of digging deeper, and maybe listening to each other's experiences, even when they sound really out there initially. Because sometimes there's a pattern worth exploring. So for you listening, what stands out from all this? What does it make you think about? About your own memories? About those gifted programs, if you were in one? What does it all mean to you? We hope this deep dive has given you a shortcut to being, well, pretty well informed on this strange phenomenon, and maybe sparked a few aha moments or at least some new questions, challenging us all to maybe look a little closer at those blurred lines between history, memory, and maybe the unseen voices that shape things.